There's something undeniably powerful about silence, especially when it follows presence. When a man who once showed up with consistency, calmness, and care chooses to walk away, not in anger or resentment, but with quiet self-respect, it leaves a noticeable shift in the air. It's a moment that doesn't require grand speeches or dramatic exits. The absence itself speaks. For many women, that moment brings unexpected reflection. It's not just about someone leaving. It's about realizing what that person represented. His energy, his steadiness, his character, it all had a quiet influence that may only fully be understood once it's no longer there. This isn't about games or manipulation. It's about what happens emotionally when a man chooses to step away from something that no longer aligns with his peace or purpose. And what a woman often feels in that moment isn't always obvious, but it's real, complex, and deeply human. Let's explore what tends to unfold in her heart and mind when a man walks away with dignity. Number 1, she feels the absence of your steady presence. Sometimes it's not the loud moments people remember, it's the quiet ones, the consistent ones, the ones where someone simply showed up without needing recognition or attention. When a man chooses to walk away with calm conviction, what is often most deeply felt in his absence isn't just his words, actions, or achievements. It's the stability of his presence. That steady presence, unassuming, reliable, calm, has a way of grounding people. And when it's gone, it's often missed more than either person realizes in the moment. For many women, especially those who had grown accustomed to a man's quiet consistency, his absence creates a noticeable emotional shift. Here's why. 1, steadiness is rare in a world full of noise. In a time where so many interactions are fast-paced, distracted, or inconsistent, steady presence stands out. A man who is emotionally balanced, attentive without being overbearing, and calm even during challenges is not just appreciated. He's needed more than people realize. When such a man walks away, it can feel like something foundational has been removed. She may find herself suddenly aware of how rare it was to be around someone who didn't constantly shift with the wind, someone who stayed true to himself regardless of circumstances. She might not have said it aloud while you were there, but she felt it. And now, in your absence, she feels the contrast. 2, your presence created a safe, emotional space. A steady presence creates emotional safety, not by fixing things, not by always having the right words, but by simply being there in a way that feels trustworthy and emotionally grounded. A man like that offers quiet reassurance, whether in moments of chaos or in everyday routines. When he walks away, it's not just the person that disappears, it's the feeling of being emotionally anchored. She may not even fully understand why she feels a little less settled, a little more distracted, but it's often because she subconsciously leaned on the quiet reliability that man provided. The emotional space he once held becomes empty, and that emptiness is felt. 3, you were present without needing to perform. There's a certain kind of presence that doesn't try too hard. It's not about impressing or dominating a conversation. It's about being fully there, mentally, emotionally, and energetically, without needing the spotlight. When a woman experiences that kind of authenticity, it makes her feel like she doesn't need to perform either. She can just be herself. That's a powerful gift. So when you walk away, she doesn't just lose a companion, she loses that environment of quiet acceptance. The space where she didn't feel judged or evaluated, where there was no pressure to be more. That loss lingers because it's so rare to find again. 4, your emotional stability was a quiet influence. Men who bring emotional steadiness into their relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, become quiet leaders. They don't demand attention, but they influence the tone of the room. They model calm under pressure, thoughtful listening, and non-reactive communication. A woman may not say it directly, but she often absorbs and mirrors that energy. Your steadiness helped her feel more at ease, more confident in the moment. When you're no longer around, she starts to notice how things feel slightly more tense or less grounded. It's not about control. It's about the natural balance that comes from someone who understands their emotions and carries themselves with quiet integrity. That kind of presence doesn't disappear unnoticed. It leaves a very specific kind of silence. 5. You held space without needing control. One of the most misunderstood strengths is the ability to simply hold space for others without trying to control, fix, or rescue. A man who can be present without overstepping, who knows when to step in and when to give space, is rare. Number 2. She feels a mix of confusion and reflection. There are moments in life when the emotional current shifts quietly, but powerfully. Sometimes it's not the loud words or dramatic departures that leave an impact. It's the silence, the distance, the change in tone, the absence of something that once felt certain. When a man she respected, cared for, or simply thought she understood begins to act differently, it doesn't just pass her by unnoticed. She feels it deeply. And often, what she feels isn't just confusion. It's a complex blend of confusion and reflection. This mixture doesn't arise from insecurity or emotional instability. Rather, it is a sign of emotional intelligence. It's a sign that she's paying attention. She's not numb to subtle shifts in behavior. She notices, she thinks, and she turns inward to make sense of what's happening. Let's explore what that confusion and reflection often mean, and why it lingers longer than she expected. 1. She can't quite place the change, but she knows it's there. One of the first reasons she feels confused is that something about your behavior has changed, but it's not always something obvious. You didn't yell. You didn't say anything cruel. You might still be polite or even warm, but something underneath feels different. Maybe you don't respond as quickly as you once did. Maybe your eye contact lingers less. Maybe your energy around her feels lighter, as if you've released something she didn't even know you were carrying. To outsiders, it might look like nothing happened. But to her, everything feels just slightly off-center, and because you haven't given her a clear explanation, she starts to ask herself questions. Did she misread you all along? Did she do something wrong? Was it always going to end like this? This quiet confusion stays with her, not because she can't move on, but because she wants to understand. 2. She reflects on her own behavior, sometimes overthinking it. When a woman feels someone pulling away, one of the first things she often does is turn the spotlight inward. She replays conversations in her mind, trying to locate the moment when things shifted. Was it something she said? Something she didn't say? Was there a missed cue? A misunderstood silence? This self-reflection can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it shows her emotional maturity. She isn't quick to blame. She's willing to take responsibility if needed. But, on the other hand, it can lead to overthinking. She may analyze benign moments with too much intensity, all because she doesn't have the full picture. Her confusion doesn't come from weakness. It comes from care. It comes from wanting to understand not just you, but herself in relation to you. 3. She thought there was mutual understanding. Another reason for the internal dissonance she feels is that at some point she believed you were on the same page. Maybe you weren't together in the official sense. Maybe it wasn't labelled or defined, but something about your energy, your words, or your consistency gave her the sense that there was a mutual understanding, a kind of quiet connection. When that perception no longer aligns with your current behavior, it throws her off balance. She starts to wonder, did she imagine the whole thing? Were you being kind or just polite? Did she see depth where there was only surface? The reflection that follows isn't just about the relationship. It's about her own ability to perceive reality. That's a heavy burden to process, especially when clarity is in short supply. 4. She recognizes her expectations might have been different. Sometimes, confusion comes not from the facts, but from the expectations built around those facts. She might have seen your gestures as signs of deeper interest, while you saw them as friendly or situational. Maybe she interpreted a certain attentiveness as something rare and meaningful, not realizing that for you, it was just how you are with everyone. When your paths begin to diverge, especially if you pull back without warning, she's left holding a different version of the story. Her expectations may not have been unrealistic, but they were built on a different interpretation of events. And now, as she reflects, she has to reconfigure that story. That's not easy to do. It requires humility and grace. It requires her to be honest with herself. And that's exactly what she does in her quiet moments of reflection. 5. She values emotional honesty and notices its absence. When someone suddenly changes their tone, disappears emotionally, or avoids clear communication, she notices. Not because she expects perfection, but because she values emotional honesty. She would rather hear a difficult truth than sit in silence, guessing at what went wrong. She's not looking to argue or cling, she's looking to understand. When that understanding is withheld, confusion grows. 3. She feels the integrity behind your decision. When a man walks away from a relationship, a connection, or even a conversation, not out of spite or frustration, but from a place of self-awareness and maturity, his choice carries a particular kind of weight. It's not just the act of leaving that speaks, it's how he leaves, and more importantly, why he does. For many women, this moment becomes an unexpected turning point, not because of ego or wounded pride, but because something deeper gets stirred, a recognition of character. When your departure is rooted in integrity, she may feel it in ways she didn't anticipate. Let's explore what that really means and why it matters so much. 1. It wasn't about control. It was about clarity. There's a noticeable difference between walking away to manipulate someone and walking away because you've reached an inner clarity. When your decision is grounded in truth, not drama, she can feel that. It doesn't come with accusations, ultimatums, or emotional power plays. Instead, it arrives quietly, like someone who has outgrown the need to prove anything. And that kind of clarity stands out. Even if she doesn't immediately understand it, she will eventually recognize that you weren't trying to make her feel anything. You were simply honoring how you felt. That level of emotional responsibility is rare and deeply respected once it's seen for what it is. 2. You took ownership of your path. Walking away with integrity means you didn't try to shift the blame or avoid accountability. You simply understood that for whatever reason, this connection was no longer right for your well-being, your values, or your growth. That self-possession, knowing your limits, needs, and non-negotiables, is felt even in your absence. She might not have been expecting it. She might have thought you'd stay longer, argue harder, or seek validation, but you didn't. You chose to walk your own path quietly and firmly. And even if she never says it aloud, she feels the strength in that choice. 3. You respected her humanity, even while letting go. Integrity doesn't mean walking away coldly or without care. It means being able to say, I see your worth, I honor your path, but I must also honor mine. You didn't diminish her. You didn't dismiss what you shared. You simply recognized that continuing on would be dishonest to either yourself or to her, or both. And so you chose the harder path, letting go with grace. That kind of decision reflects deep emotional maturity, and that's not something she'll forget. It plants a seed of quiet respect that tends to grow with time, because so many people leave in anger, in chaos, or in silence. But when you leave with dignity, you remind her of something steady and strong, something not easily replaced. 4. You chose honesty over comfort. Often, the easier route is to stay, out of fear, convenience, or habit. But you didn't. You chose to be honest with yourself and with the situation, even if it was uncomfortable. That honesty might hurt at first, but it holds a different kind of pain. It's not the pain of betrayal or dismissal, it's the pain of truth. And that's a pain that eventually brings healing. By choosing not to stay in something half-hearted, you told her, without words, that she deserves someone who is fully there, and that you deserve to be in alignment with your values. She may not appreciate it right away, but when the emotions settle, the sincerity of your honesty will begin to surface in her reflections. 5. You refuse to compromise your values. One of the clearest signs of integrity is refusing to betray your inner compass just to maintain peace on the outside. When you walk away because a situation asked you to be someone you're not, or to accept something that didn't sit right with your principles, you are standing for something larger than comfort. You're choosing alignment over approval, and she can feel that, even if she doesn't agree. She may not have seen things your way. She may have had her own version of the story, but in time, most people can recognize when someone is simply unwilling to live out of sync with their values. And that's where real, lasting respect often begins. Not in agreement, but in recognition of principle. 6. You didn't destroy the bridge. You simply walked off it. Some people exit relationships in ways that burn everything behind them. They lash out, say things they can't take back, and turn endings into battlegrounds. But integrity looks different. It says, this path no longer serves us both, and I need to go another way. But I don't need to diminish what we shared to justify my leaving. When you walk away without bitterness, without the need to hurt or humiliate, it shows emotional depth. It tells her that your decision wasn't made to punish. It was made to protect peace. 4, she may feel the echo of what was unspoken. There is a quiet language we all speak, even when we do not realize it. It's the language of glances that linger a second too long, of pauses that stretch just slightly, of thoughts that never make it into words but hang in the air between two people. In these moments, there's something more powerful than words, something that resonates deeply, even in silence. And for a woman who is attentive, sensitive, and emotionally attuned, the echo of what remains unspoken can be profoundly felt. She may not always know exactly what you meant, but she feels the ripple of something unfinished. She senses the shift in energy, the subtle drop in tone, the distance that wasn't there before. She feels what you didn't say just as deeply, sometimes more so, than what you did. And though you may think silence is the absence of communication, to her, it can feel louder than any conversation. Let's explore the reasons why the unspoken carries so much weight, and why a woman might feel the echo of it long after the moment has passed. 1. She pays attention to the emotional current. Not everyone listens with their ears. Some listen with their hearts, with their intuition. When a woman is emotionally perceptive, she picks up on the undercurrents of your communication. How your words don't match your body language, how your smile is a little forced, how your voice trails off when you start to speak about something important. She notices the shift in your demeanor, the slight tension in your shoulders, the way your eyes flicker away during vulnerable moments. These are the cues she tunes into. And when there's something important you're holding back, something you feel but won't say, it doesn't go unnoticed. It creates a presence, a weight, a vibration in the space between you. She feels that. 2. Unspoken feelings often carry the most weight. It's one thing to say something directly. It gives clarity, closure, and certainty. But when something is left unsaid, it becomes a question mark, a lingering thought, a feeling that stays alive because it never had the chance to be heard, acknowledged, or understood. Unspoken feelings, whether they are about love, confusion, disappointment, or hope, don't disappear just because they're hidden. Instead, they seep into the environment. They shape the way people relate to one another. When a woman feels there was something meaningful that you couldn't or wouldn't say, that meaning doesn't vanish. It echoes in her memory, often louder and more haunting than any sentence could have been. 3. She has a deep relationship with intuition. Some women have developed a strong inner compass, an intuitive sense that tells them when something is off. It's not always logical or easy to explain, but it's there, and it speaks clearly. And when your words contradict your energy, or your actions betray your silence, she feels it. She may not confront it immediately. She may give you space to come to terms with what you're holding back. But she'll remember. She'll sit with that quiet tension and try to understand it. Sometimes she'll carry it for longer than she should, wondering if she imagined it, questioning whether it was her place to notice. But deep down, she knows she didn't imagine it. She felt something true in the silence, something meaningful. 4. She values authentic connection. For someone who seeks authenticity, surface-level conversation is never enough. She longs for real connection, genuine expression, open-hearted dialogue, and a mutual willingness to be seen and understood. When something is left unsaid, especially in a moment that calls for vulnerability or honesty, it can feel like a missed opportunity. It can feel like a door that was half open, then quietly closed. This isn't about confrontation or dramatic revelations. It's about mutual understanding. When you choose not to say something, especially something that would bring you closer or offer clarity, she may feel that gap. And because she values what's real, the absence of truth can feel more significant than the presence of polite words. 5. She's been in this space before. A woman who has lived through emotional experiences of being misunderstood, of carrying feelings without resolution, of watching people drift away without explanation, knows what it's like to feel the impact of what goes unspoken. She's learned how silence can be a message in itself, how avoidance can echo louder than presence. She recognizes the pattern, the hesitation, the withdrawal, the choice to protect oneself instead of engaging openly. And because she's felt it before, she knows what it means when someone walks away from a conversation that needed to happen. She knows how the silence grows with time. She doesn't need to hear the words to know they existed. 5. She feels the emotional contrast. When someone meaningful walks away, it's not just their physical absence that's felt. It's the emotional contrast they leave behind. A contrast between what was and what now is, between how it felt to be around you and how it feels now that you're gone. It's subtle, but it's undeniable. And for many women, that contrast creates space for deep emotional reflection. It's not always about love lost or romantic attachment. Often, it's about presence. Your consistent way of showing up, your grounded nature, your quiet support. And when that is no longer part of her life, she begins to notice just how impactful it truly was. Let's explore why this emotional contrast resonates so deeply with her. 1. Your presence offered a steady emotional rhythm. In a world full of unpredictability and noise, a man who carries emotional steadiness can be a rare kind of calm. If you consistently brought groundedness, patience, and clear thinking into conversations, your presence likely served as an emotional anchor, perhaps more than either of you realized at the time. When you leave, she begins to feel the difference between the grounded tone you set and the emotional volatility that may now surround her. She notices how your presence once slowed the pace, encouraged thoughtfulness, or brought stability during uncertain moments. That emotional rhythm is suddenly missing, and it creates a contrast she can't easily ignore. 2. She notices how others make her feel, compared to how you did. In the wake of your departure, her interactions with others take on new meaning. Conversations may feel more superficial, less safe, or less emotionally intentional. Where your words once brought insight, empathy, or quiet strength, other exchanges may now feel rushed, reactive, or distracted. This isn't necessarily about missing you as a person, but rather recognizing the way you showed up, the way you listened without rushing to solve, the way you responded thoughtfully rather than reacting emotionally. Those traits, when removed, highlight a contrast between everyday interactions and the kind of emotional maturity you embodied. It's in these small daily moments that the contrast becomes clearest. 3. She realizes the emotional safety you created. Many men don't realize the impact of creating emotional safety until they're gone. It's not about saying all the right things or being overly expressive. Sometimes it's just about being consistent, being a safe emotional space where someone doesn't have to explain themselves from the beginning every time. If you made her feel heard without judgment, if you responded with quiet attentiveness instead of jumping to conclusions, then you likely gave her a sense of emotional safety that wasn't loud, but was deeply meaningful. When that safety is gone, it doesn't always get replaced right away. She may find herself feeling more guarded in conversations, less open, or unsure of how she'll be received. That gap, the space between the emotional comfort you offered and what she now experiences, is where the contrast lives. 4. She feels the difference between emotional depth and emotional noise. You may have brought a sense of emotional clarity, an ability to see things clearly, to speak with intention, and to listen with real presence. That kind of depth creates an emotional environment where real connection can take root, even in silence. Once you're no longer there, emotional noise can feel louder. Surface-level conversations, shallow exchanges, and a lack of meaningful engagement become more obvious. She may begin to recognize that while others may fill space with words, few can create connection through quiet presence. And that's when she starts to miss, not necessarily you as a person, but the emotional clarity you carried with you. 5. She begins to compare how she feels now to how she felt then. It's natural for the human mind to compare, and when she begins reflecting, she'll likely notice how she felt in your company. More relaxed, more herself, more emotionally grounded. Maybe she laughed a little more genuinely, or felt a little more confident in conversations. Maybe she didn't feel the need to perform, impress, or compete. Now, without that emotional environment, her internal state may shift. She might feel slightly more anxious, less certain, or even more exhausted by the demands of other relationships. That difference in how she feels now versus how she felt then becomes a powerful emotional contrast that stays with her. 6. She realizes how rare emotional presence really is. Most people talk. Few people listen. Fewer still know how to be present, calm, undemanding, quietly confident. If you carried those qualities, then your absence becomes more than just a lack of communication. It becomes a reminder of how uncommon true emotional presence is. She may find that even in a room full of people, she still feels a kind of emptiness. Not because she's alone, but because what you brought can't be easily replaced. Your absence becomes a mirror that reflects how deeply your emotional presence once filled the room. 7. She may feel a deeper appreciation. After you're gone, some things are only appreciated fully in hindsight. It's not always because she didn't value you, but because we all sometimes underestimate the power of subtle traits: reliability, calmness, emotional depth, empathy. Now that you're no longer available, she sees those qualities for what they were: rare, not flashy, not loud, but grounding, centering, and quietly powerful. That appreciation may not always be expressed aloud. It may come in the form of quiet thoughtfulness, private journaling, or moments of pause where she realizes that what you offered wasn't ordinary, it was quietly extraordinary. 8. She feels the difference between being seen and being observed. You may have made her feel seen in a way that others don't. That doesn't mean endless compliments or constant attention. It means you notice things. Her strengths, her character, her growth. You paid attention to what mattered, not just what was obvious. Now, without that reflective presence, she may feel more like she's being watched, judged, or evaluated, rather than truly seen and understood. That emotional contrast, though subtle, cuts deep, because being seen is about being accepted without explanation, and when that's no longer there, the world can start to feel more performative and less safe. 9. She may begin to miss the silence. You filled with meaning. Not all silence is awkward. Some silence is shared comfort. If your presence made silence feel calm instead of tense, restful instead of empty, then she may begin to miss that subtle emotional space you created. Now, without it, she may notice that silence feels louder, more uncertain, more hollow. This emotional contrast isn't about loneliness. It's about recognizing how rare it is to share space with someone whose quiet presence was enough. And that recognition doesn't fade quickly. 6. She might feel respect. Sometimes too late. There are moments in life when we look back and realize the value of something only once it's gone. For many women, this realization doesn't always come in the form of regret over lost romance or affection. It often comes in the quiet, solemn acknowledgement of the respect they eventually feel for someone they once overlooked, underestimated, or misunderstood. It's not about longing or attraction. It's about maturity, reflection, and seeing someone's integrity with clearer eyes. This article explores why a woman might feel genuine respect for a man, sometimes too late, and what that really says about both of them. It delves into the subtle shifts in perception, the maturing of hindsight, and how acts of quiet dignity can leave an impression that outlasts even presence. 1. She begins to recognize his emotional discipline. Respect doesn't always grow out of loud achievements or visible success. More often, it emerges from the way a person carries themselves when things are not going their way. When a man chooses calm over chaos, self-control over confrontation, and thoughtfulness over impulsiveness, it often goes unnoticed in the moment, especially in a world that prizes drama and immediate gratification. But later, especially after facing more volatile personalities or chaotic experiences, a woman may begin to reflect on that quiet strength and realize how rare and valuable it was. His ability to remain steady under pressure wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was that he didn't let emotion dictate every reaction. That kind of emotional regulation speaks volumes about character, and it often becomes more apparent with time. 2. She remembers the way he listened, without trying to fix her. There's a powerful kind of respect that comes from feeling truly heard, not solved, not managed, not dismissed, just heard. Many men, even with good intentions, jump quickly into problem-solving mode when someone is sharing something difficult. But the man she remembers, the one she eventually respects, may have simply offered his presence, his full attention, and his understanding. He didn't rush to correct her thinking or minimize her pain. He just held space for her thoughts to breathe. In hindsight, that presence feels deeply respectful. It reflects not only kindness but also emotional maturity, a capacity to be there for someone without needing to take control of their experience. And when she later finds herself in conversations where she isn't heard or is constantly interrupted, she remembers him. And respect begins to deepen, though he may no longer be around to see it. 3. She realizes he never played games. In a world of mixed signals, delayed replies, and unclear intentions, clarity and honesty can feel revolutionary, but often only in hindsight. Sometimes, when someone is genuine from the beginning, their straightforwardness can feel almost too simple to trust. But later, after encountering enough inconsistency or manipulation, a woman might look back on the man who was always upfront, respectful of her time and clear about his intentions, and feel a kind of delayed admiration. She might not have understood then that he wasn't being too intense or too direct. He was just being authentic. He had the integrity to be consistent with his words and actions. And that kind of honesty, which may have once felt unfamiliar or even overwhelming, starts to take on its true shape over time. It looks like integrity, and that earns respect. 4. She reflects on the boundaries he held with grace. Not every connection ends in bitterness. Sometimes it ends because one person knows their worth and upholds their boundaries, even if it means walking away. A woman may come to deeply respect the man who didn't compromise his values to keep the peace. He didn't allow himself to be mistreated, manipulated, or strung along. He was kind, yes, but also firm. And at the time, she might have mistaken that firmness for coldness. But with time, and after recognizing how rare such self-respect is, she begins to understand. He didn't walk away to hurt her. He walked away to protect his own dignity. And suddenly, that strength becomes admirable. The clarity of his boundaries begins to make sense. He wasn't being distant, he was being self-aware. And even if she didn't fully appreciate it at the time, she might now find herself quietly respecting that decision. 5. She understands the value of his steady presence. Life has a way of highlighting the value of reliability, not flashy gestures, not temporary thrills, but the quiet, consistent presence of someone who shows up. Maybe he wasn't the most charismatic person in the room. Maybe he didn't command attention or use poetic words. But he was there when it mattered. He remembered the little things. He followed through on what he said he would do. He showed up, again and again, not because he had to, but because he chose to be dependable. That kind of loyalty and dependability often gets taken for granted, until it's gone. And when she's later met with broken promises or people who are only there when it's convenient, the memory of his reliability returns with weight. She begins to respect not just who he was, but how he lived, by his word. 6. She starts to see the quiet confidence he carried. Not all confidence announces itself loudly. Some of the most respectful and admirable people move with a quiet assurance. They know who they are, and they don't need to prove it to anyone. At the time, his calm nature might have been mistaken for passivity. Maybe his humility made him easy to overlook in a world that rewards arrogance. But later, as she becomes more attuned to substance over show, she realizes what he actually carried: self-respect, confidence without ego, a solid sense of self. And that kind of self-possession leaves a lasting impression. Because when someone moves through the world without needing validation, their confidence begins to speak more loudly in their absence than it ever did in their presence. 7. She sees how he treated everyone with equal respect. One of the most telling signs of a person's character is how they treat those who can offer them nothing. He didn't reserve kindness only for those who were useful. He spoke respectfully to strangers. He treated service workers with dignity. He didn't mock, belittle, or dominate conversations. His respect wasn't conditional. It was a part of his nature. At the time, it might have seemed ordinary, or perhaps she didn't consciously register it. But over time, as she witnessed people who were disrespectful, dismissive, or self-important, she remembered him. And what once felt like common decency now felt rare and worthy of admiration. 8. She acknowledges that he never asked her to change. Some men try to mold others into their ideal. They want someone quieter, louder, more ambitious, less emotional, someone different, but not him. He never tried to change her. He accepted her complexities, her thoughts, her strengths, and even her uncertainties. He saw her as a full person, not as a project to be fixed or a puzzle to be solved. And though she may not have seen it as respect at the time, in hindsight, she realizes the depth of that acceptance. That's the kind of respect that becomes clearer with maturity, because not everyone offers space to grow without judgment. And when someone does, it tends to leave a lasting imprint. 9. She realizes he meant what he said. Words are easy, promises are cheap. But follow through? That's where integrity lives. He didn't speak just to be liked. He didn't overpromise or try to charm with hollow statements. His words had weight because he lived by them. He didn't say he respected her. He showed it through action, patience, and consistency. Sometimes, that kind of steadiness doesn't feel exciting in the moment. But later, as she sees how rare it is to find someone who speaks with sincerity, she begins to remember what he said and how he said it. And with that memory comes respect. 7. She feels challenged to grow. When a man walks away with grace and clarity, not out of bitterness, but out of an inner sense of calm and self-respect, it can stir something significant within a woman. His absence, especially when it's not laced with blame or resentment, becomes more than a silence. It becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, she may begin to see herself differently. This quiet yet profound shift often leads to something she may not expect at first. The feeling of being challenged, not by confrontation, but by reflection. Challenged not to change for him, but to look inward, to assess where she's been emotionally, how she's shown up in the relationship, and whether she's been fully in alignment with her own values and desires. Let's explore what that kind of challenge looks like and why it matters. 1. She begins to reflect on her emotional presence. One of the most powerful effects of someone walking away is that it creates space, and in that space, reflection has room to take root. She might begin to think about how emotionally present she truly was. Was she attentive? or distracted? Did she respond with empathy, or was she emotionally distant without realizing it? Was she truly available, not just in words, but in intention? Your decision to walk away can inspire her to pause and ask these difficult but necessary questions. And in doing so, she starts to explore her own emotional depth, often more deeply than she did before. 2. She reconsiders her priorities. When someone departs a relationship or connection calmly, especially without placing blame, it causes a reordering of priorities. She may find herself evaluating what really matters to her, not just in relationships, but in life. Was she focused on things that ultimately didn't bring her fulfillment? Was she caught up in busyness or external validation, and in doing so, missed a meaningful connection? Was she aligned with her long-term values, or simply reacting to short-term emotions? This kind of honest re-examination can be humbling, but it also opens the door to growth. 3. She begins to value what she overlooked. People often don't recognize the full value of someone's character until it's no longer part of their daily life. Your patience, your steadiness, your respectful presence, all of it might have blended into the background when it was readily available. But when you walk away, especially in a grounded and non-reactive way, it forces her to notice the void left behind. She begins to realize how rare those qualities are, and, more importantly, she begins to reflect on whether she was truly valuing them at the time. This isn't about guilt, it's about awakening. 4. She confronts her own patterns. Your departure may gently but firmly bring her face to face with patterns she hasn't yet fully acknowledged. Perhaps she recognizes a tendency to avoid emotional vulnerability, or maybe she begins to see how she dismisses or pushes people away before they get too close. In any case, walking away can surface patterns she hadn't confronted before. And while it may be uncomfortable, it can also be liberating. Because once you see a pattern clearly, you can begin to shift it. She may not have recognized these behaviors while you were still around, but your absence and the respect with which you handled it can lead her to deeper self-awareness. 5. She feels the difference between reaction and response. There is a notable difference between someone who storms off in frustration and someone who walks away with composure. The former tends to provoke defensiveness. The latter invites introspection. When you walk away in a manner that reflects maturity and emotional steadiness, you model the power of response over reaction. And that, in itself, becomes a challenge to her own way of handling situations. She might begin to ask herself, how do I usually respond when things get uncomfortable? Do I react impulsively, or do I take a breath and reflect first? Seeing you lead with calm restraint might inspire her to develop that same skill in herself. 6. She begins her own inner work. Not because you told her to, not because you demanded it, but because your actions, your quiet exit, your boundaries, your emotional clarity spoke more loudly than words ever could. That kind of non-verbal influence is powerful. It doesn't pressure her into change. It invites it. She may begin journaling, going to therapy, setting stronger boundaries, or simply becoming more intentional in her choices, not as a reaction to losing you, but as a way of reconnecting with herself. In that way, your departure becomes a seed for her own self-growth. 7. She recognizes the need for mutual accountability. In many relationships, the emotional burden can become uneven without either person fully noticing. One may carry more of the emotional labor, while the other remains unaware. When you walk away, you create an opportunity for her to examine this balance. She may realize that the dynamic wasn't as mutual as it could have been. or that she wasn't taking full responsibility for her role in maintaining a healthy connection. Rather than feeling shamed, she may feel challenged to step into greater emotional accountability, not just in future relationships, but with herself. 8. She rethinks what strength looks like. In a world where emotional restraint is often mistaken for weakness, your ability to calmly step back may redefine what strength looks like to her. She may have thought strength meant staying in something until the bitter end, or always keeping emotions tightly guarded. But your ability to walk away, not out of coldness, but because you are choosing peace over conflict, offers a new image of strength, one that includes boundaries, emotional intelligence, and self-respect. That image might reshape how she approaches her own life moving forward. 9. She learns that connection must be earned, not assumed. Sometimes, people unknowingly assume that others will always be there. That presence, consistency, and kindness are things to be expected rather than appreciated. Your decision to leave, especially when done without anger or blame, reminds her that deep connection is not guaranteed. It must be nurtured, appreciated, and respected. And this realization can deeply influence how she approaches future relationships, not with fear, but with a renewed commitment to honoring the people who show up for her. 10. She becomes more intentional about future relationships. Once she has had time to process your absence and the reasons behind it, she may become much more intentional about how she connects with others. She might take more time to truly understand people, to communicate more clearly, and to show appreciation where it's due. She may begin to approach relationships not from a place of need or expectation, but from clarity and care. And that shift is often rooted in the quiet, thoughtful challenge your departure gave her. Number 8, she feels the emotional integrity you carried in human relationships, whether personal, professional, or casual. Emotional integrity plays a significant role. It is a quality that not only shapes how others perceive us, but also how we interact with the world. Emotional integrity can be defined as the alignment between one's thoughts, feelings, and actions, and it serves as a reflection of the authenticity that one embodies in their life. When someone carries emotional integrity, they exhibit consistency in how they express their emotions and manage their behavior, regardless of the circumstances. The impact of emotional integrity on others cannot be overstated. For individuals who are attuned to it, such as a woman noticing the way you carry yourself emotionally, it is something that does not go unnoticed. She feels it deeply. It resonates with her because emotional integrity acts as a stabilizing force in relationships, creating a sense of security and trust. This perception of integrity is not just felt in the grand moments, but also in the quieter, more subtle exchanges. 1. Consistency in behavior and words. One of the first things people notice when you carry emotional integrity is consistency. This consistency is seen in the way you express your emotions and how your words align with your actions. People, especially those you interact with frequently, will come to recognize that your emotional responses do not vary drastically based on external factors. If you are calm in a stressful situation, if you remain respectful even when under pressure, or if your kindness doesn't waver regardless of the circumstances, it will speak volumes. When you show consistency, you offer a sense of reliability to the people around you. They know what to expect from you emotionally, and this stability fosters trust. For a woman, this can be particularly reassuring. She feels safe knowing that your emotional responses are genuine and not driven by fleeting moods or hidden agendas. 2. The depth of your emotional awareness. Carrying emotional integrity also involves a high level of emotional intelligence. This means you are aware of your feelings and understand how they influence your behavior and interactions. Emotional integrity is not about suppressing feelings, but being aware of them and understanding when to express them and when to manage them. A woman can sense when someone has this emotional self-awareness. She can feel that your actions are coming from a place of understanding and introspection, rather than impulsiveness or unresolved emotional turmoil. Your ability to navigate complex feelings with maturity and insight allows her to feel a deep level of respect for your emotional integrity. 3. Honesty without harshness. While emotional integrity involves being true to your emotions, it does not mean speaking everything that comes to mind without considering the impact. Instead, it involves expressing your emotions in a thoughtful and considerate manner. Emotional integrity means that you are able to be honest about how you feel while also maintaining kindness and respect for others' feelings. When a woman notices this honesty in you, she feels a profound respect. She knows that you are not trying to manipulate or control the situation with your emotions. Your honesty is a gift, one that respects both your feelings and hers. She appreciates the transparency you bring to the relationship, making it easier for her to trust that what you say is what you truly mean. 4. Accountability for your emotions. A significant aspect of emotional integrity is being accountable for your own emotions. It is easy to project blame onto others or external circumstances for how we feel, but someone with emotional integrity takes responsibility for their emotions. This means acknowledging when you're upset, disappointed, or frustrated without blaming others for your feelings. For a woman, seeing you take responsibility for your emotions is a sign of maturity and strength. She feels confident in your ability to process your feelings without dragging others into them or using them as a crutch. This accountability shows that you are not only emotionally responsible, but also emotionally reliable, further reinforcing her trust in you. 5. Emotional availability. Emotional integrity also means being emotionally available to others. You don't shut down when emotions get complex, and you don't hide behind defenses when confronted with vulnerability. Instead, you are open to sharing your feelings and supporting others in theirs. This openness fosters a connection that transcends superficial interactions. When a woman experiences this kind of emotional availability from you, she feels heard, seen, and valued. She knows she can come to you with her own feelings without fear of judgment or dismissal. Your emotional openness encourages her to feel comfortable in being vulnerable with you, which strengthens the bond between you both.